They tell us it's the strange times that we live in that they're now telling people you're going to be getting a COVID vaccine every year. And doctors literally are meeting together in secret and not. They're kind of making it known because they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. They don't know how to respond to any of this. They're just like, you know, they're they had like the Zoom call to talk about pain and how their patients with long COVID, what the pain was like. And so these are long COVID clinics. That's what they call them, with people that have, I guess, permanent damage or constantly have COVID. And there are 40 of those clinics across the nation, and they've been meeting, trying to figure out, what's going on and why is this debilitating to millions of Americans. And they don't seem to understand. Is the vaccine affecting it? Is it just what it is? This looks like rads. We don't understand. We're giving them this medication. It's not working. And so apparently the disease, as now they're calling it, is that 16 million Americans between the ages of 18 and 65, so the more able-bodied and not the so vulnerable, have long COVID. And about I would say, so it would be about an eighth of those, so like 2 to 4 million of them are out of work because of it, because they can't breathe. And they're confused as to, is it because they got the vaccine? Is it because they had it and it's a residual response? They don't know. They don't understand. Now, speaking of medications, in Texas, it was ruled that requiring insurances to cover prophylactic HIV medications is unconstitutional. Now, I did have this conversation with all of you in 2020 when COVID first came out, and I expressed to you how they're constantly advertising, hey, take this medicine just in case you have sex with someone with HIV. And it's like, why not just give them a condom? It doesn't make sense. But we talked about it in 2020 when I talked about the graphene then, and I told you about HIV. Well, now it's coming full circle that Texas has decided to say that even though Obamacare said that you're supposed to be giving these medications, you're supposed to be covering them under employer insurance policies, or just in general, all insurances in Texas are supposed to cover it. It's deemed unconstitutional. Now, the ruling came out of district judge for the Northern District of Texas. And, he agrees that, yes, even though he had previously ruled that Obamacare itself was unconstitutional, this decision of the United States Preventative Services Task Force, is also an issue. And so obviously we have the pundits coming in saying this ruling is shocking on every level. It's evidence that, public health and human rights, it sets back enormous progress. And now they're throwing in the homophobic thing, saying that, it also compels religious employers and religious individuals who purchase health insurance to subsidize these behaviors as a condition of health insurance. So apparently only gay people get AIDS and HIV. So they're the only ones. So it pretty much says that now religious employers, don't have to provide coverage to facilitate and encourage homosexual behavior, prostitution, sexual promiscuity, and intravenous drug use. And it's like, wait, what? How is that even an argument? Like, how is that even an argument? So you're saying now it's giving, brownie points and a right for religious people to say, hey, if you're a homosexual, use heroin, intravenous drugs, or are a prostitute or a slut, our insurance isn't going to cover that. Like, I mean, how are these even conversations that are being had? It is the most insane thing I have ever heard of. Yet, yes, there are people that are clearly making these claims. And that was the complaint that was filed in the spring of 2020 by attorneys who argued that the Affordable Care Act requires coverage for pre-exposure prophylaxis, the PrEP drugs that they talk about, um, for the HIV virus. And so I, I do not know how to respond to that at all. I mean, in the medical field, it's just looking really crazy right now. It is extremely crazy. Um, People don't seem to know who to trust. All hospitals, their patient satisfaction surveys are at ultimate lows, that the hospitals aren't treating people correctly. Of course they're not. You made them heroes. You gave them statues. You called it a Heroes Act and thumped them while they were twerking, while people were allegedly dying. Why would they care about their patients if they're twerking and mocking dead people? The insanity just continues. Now, there's a new mental thing that's affecting the workforce, and that's called, get this, back to work blues. Are we kidding? Like, what is going on here? So now COVID not only gives you long COVID, not only do you have to get a shot every year and you're fully boosted now, right? And it's not working. And most of the people that are boosted are getting really, really sick. Now they're telling you, well, people need to ease into getting back to work because they have going back to work blues. It's just what crazy. Now, another thing is your cyber oligarchs are now entering the field of tracking diseases to save businesses millions of dollars. So, it is the most, I would say, 1984-ish thing I have ever heard of. So there was this pandemic bestseller. It's Dr. Charity Dean, who was in that book, Premonition by Michael Lewis. Anyway, she has this new $43 million, that's how much she raised, company. It's a biosecurity platform where she is working to create a great tracking app for businesses to have their employees implement to track diseases that they have based on COVID, because that will help everything, apparently, by tracking everyone. In addition, speaking of COVID, aside from having to get annual COVID boosters, some scientists discovered that there are specific antibodies that they say could make boosters unnecessary. So apparently now they're finding that, human immune cells are pretty good. And look at that. It's going down to tau. Tau. The Omicron strain was 90% effective at neutralizing Delta. And it was the Tau 2310, which is 84% effective in neutralizing the Omicron. So now they found Tau. And I've talked about Taus before. Maybe this is why Biden kept talking about dementia, but I digress. Let's shift gears. Let's stop talking about health and let's talk about what is going on in Washington, D.C. with this J6 trials. So Stuart Rhodes, which I spoke to, and he's a really good guy. He loves his country. He's not evil. Okay. I don't want anyone to misconstrue what he told me. He just told me who hired and who orchestrated, right? Well, anyway, he's finding that his lawyers are not representing him correctly and asked the judge to not have the trial on the 27th of September because he needs to get new attorneys because they're not good. Guess what a judge told him? The judge questioned what he was actually trying to do and refused to remove his existing lawyers from the case. Now, this should concern every single American. You have the right to representation. You have the right to decide who is going to be your lawyer. Now, a judge cannot demand that you hold on to attorneys that you are not comfortable with. How would a judge demand that he keeps the attorneys when he, the client, feels that they're not good? This is a big problem. This is a very, very big problem because no judge has the right to impose upon someone legal counsel that they do not feel comfortable with. Honestly, I'm shocked. Many people may not agree. Maybe many people would love to just see him die in the darkness. This is not fair. This is really not right. This is America, and we cannot have judges making decisions like that. These judges. You know what, guys? Look how many of us there are. Let me put it in this sense. So today we participated together because I usually participate in these things on my own, usually not talking but watching. We participated in the FOIA advisory committee with NARA. The reason is that we want them to see that we're watching. And we want them to know that they're going to be held accountable. That's step one. And we should be doing this all the time, jumping on every single public feed and holding them accountable. Two, when judges are acting inappropriate, you as a citizen are allowed to file bar complaints against the judges. Why aren't all of us, you may not like Stuart Rhodes. You don't have to like him, but you have to honor the rights that he has as a citizen. And see, something that people should be doing is filing bar complaints or judicial complaints against these judges that are doing whatever they want. Because this isn't the way we operate in the United States of America. In the United States of America, you are innocent until proven guilty, and you are allowed to have proper counsel. So even if you're not involved, the news have clearly put it out that the judge denied him, and I quote, "The notion that you are going to create some kind of havoc, that you will, and havoc is the only appropriate word I can think of, by moving Mr. Rhodes' trial. It's not going to happen," said the U.S. District Judge Amit Mehta. And he said that Rhodes actually said that to Edward Tarpley. And that's because Stuart Rhodes asked for a new lawyer. And the judge went on to question what Rhodes was actually trying to do and ultimately refused to remove the existing lawyers from the case. How does a judge refuse to remove existing lawyers, considering the fact that they rolled up Kelly Sorrell, who he was sleeping with, right? And they had some sort of relationship, and she was his attorney, right? They rolled her up after having conversations with those lawyers. I would feel uncomfortable with those lawyers. So why is it that this judge is allowed to say, no, you're going to keep those lawyers because I said so? That's not how it works. I would feel uncomfortable to have those as lawyers if that occurred, which means there's no, what is it called? Oh, do you guys remember that little tidbit I did a couple weeks ago where I was like, oh, look at this. The FBI is requesting to make attorneys criminal informants or have them as human or, lures or whatever you want to call them, right? And they're asking to waive any penalties that lawyer might have as attorney client privilege so they could give them information on the record. And the judge was like, what? No. Think about that. So his lawyers had a conversation with Kelly Sorrell about a week ago, too. She was like, yeah, I'll come and testify for Stewart. She gets arrested by the FBI because she's going to testify on his behalf. And now he's like, yo, I don't trust these lawyers. Hey, there could be a judge that offered the FBI, okay, you can use attorneys as informants and they won't get in trouble for attorney-client privilege. Do you see where I'm going with this? Your attorney-client privilege is one of the most important covenants of justice. We may have judges in DC that have given waivers to attorneys because the FBI asked for it. This is very important to justice. Every single person that supposedly fights for freedom should be mentioning this. And we should be complaining that we are concerned with violations of actual laws in the United States. The fact that this judge had the audacity to say, I am refusing to remove the existing lawyers is ridiculous. He has no rights, right? Another thing we had is that in New Mexico, a judge ordered that Coy Griffin, who's a commissioner of Otero County, who got rid of the machines, if you remember, who advocated for it, he was removed from the office for violating the 14th Amendment by participating in the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot, which the judge described as an insurrection. The judge's name is District Court Judge Francis Matthew. Everyone in New Mexico should be filing complaints about him. So he interprets it as an insurrection because he says so. The guy was there conducting his First Amendment rights. And because of that, they remove him from office because they have been successfully removing digital machines from elections. Do you see how that works? And this is the first time any court has ever officially ruled on the January 6th attack to have this been an insurrection under the law. This judge needs to be hung by their toes because this is not acceptable for a judge on their own who has no access to any footage or any factual knowledge to make a decision like that and remove someone and disenfranchising their voters. If I was Griffin, I would be filing a lawsuit under the Voting Rights Act. I would be trying somehow, 1983, I would be throwing the kitchen sink and I would be holding that judge accountable. See, I've said this many, many, many times before. We can deal with a corrupt legislative arm. We can deal with a corrupt executive arm, but we cannot deal with a corrupt judicial arm. And obviously, DC is a problem. But what we need to be focusing on is on judges like this guy, like Judge Francis Matthew of the District Court in New Mexico. He needs to be removed from the bench. Removed from the bench. Now, speaking of J6, I'm going to have to tell you, working on this, taking it from the top, from early 2020, when the orchestration was being put together by federal employees, by NGOs, by private companies. I have followed every single step of it. I have been going through thousands of hours of footage. And last week, when I was meeting with certain people in regards to J6, I came to the realization that either people knowingly and willingly, or unwillingly and knowingly, or willingly but unknowingly instigated the riot. And these are people that many of you subscribe, like, and share. And it has broken my heart completely because I realized, I want to say that they were unknowingly doing this, but hours before the Capitol storming, people that represent America at its finest, supposedly, were asking random people on the street almost as if they were applauding and inciting, hey, are you going to storm the Capitol if they decide to not, send back the electors? These are people that were supposed to be in our movement. And when I say ours, it's both left and right that support truth and honesty. And so then it brings me into question. Could have these people been working with those high level SESs that helped orchestrate this? And that for me is a question that I cannot answer. And people that are very smart, that have been attorney generals in the past and prosecutors, also came to the same conclusion as myself. And that was very disheartening. Very disheartening. So as J6 plows along, I wanted to figure out, is the shaman really in jail? Or are they just saying it? It just seems a little bit, and I'll explain why later. Because the examination of evidence, that Q shaman guy, I'll tell you what, he used to be the climate shaman for the Democrats as well. And it seems that there may be paperwork for a gig. So I ask of you, how many of these people are actually in jail? And how many of them are not? There was one gentleman that was arrested. I've read his report. I've looked at all the footage. And I found footage of him throwing a flashbang grenade. Very clear. Very clear. That was nowhere on the report from the FBI, nowhere on the indictment documents. And his lawyer was El Chapo's lawyer. Which also brings me to question just how elaborate this whole scheme was. And so for me, I am very, very concerned as to what is going on in DC, considering that today I see that a judge is disallowing an American citizen from deciding who is their counsel. It's unacceptable. And it's got to stop. In the meantime, we have the media already laying out the narrative of how horrific America's future will be if, and I quote, Trumpers win. This was an article that was written today by Brian Karem of Salon. Obviously, it's Salon, like seriously. But he says, for those that are pondering on how to use their vote this fall, it's time to take a look at what kind of future we will face should those who call themselves Trump patriots succeed, either through the ballot box, violence, or both. I've seen one of those possible futures for the United States, and I can only hope it's not the future of the United States. And I want you guys to understand clearly that the only way that we take back our nation is by participating. And not only participating, but demanding change. Not asking nicely. And yes, so we're going to vote on the machines? And you think your vote will count? You think that will change something? That will not change a thing. We cannot use machines to count the ballots or be used to cast a ballot. Because then we lose. Again, how do you know this is what they're terrified of? Every single one of you can organize within your state groups to demand at a county level that you do not consent. This is a very powerful thing. You don't have to go to court. You tell them, I do not consent to have any machines involved in my elections. You have that right as a taxpayer of your county. And if you and a bunch of your friends go down there and tell them, put it in writing, I do not consent. Put it on your agenda, I do not consent. I do not consent. People can actually do this, not sit around and look at memes and wait for someone to come in and rescue them. You have a bigger voice than anybody right now. You, the people, have a bigger voice than anybody right now. And instead of focusing on what you can change, you're looking at shit that you can't. You're looking at, oh, look, is this person dead? Oh, let's check out what Beyonce is wearing. Oh my gosh, this. Oh my gosh, Podesta. Podesta was going to come back anyway. This whole UN thing is his idea, his baby from day one. Why don't you focus on something that can actually change all of that? Why don't you actually get to work? This is what people should be doing. You can go down to your county and say, who can hey, county people, here you go. Director of county elections, here we go. I do not consent. Here's my address. Here's my name. Put that on file. I do not consent. I do not want these machines touching my ballot. You can't hack paper. You cannot provide me 100%, accuracy that, and with your hand over fire, that none of this can be hacked. So we should not be using them. I do not consent. I do not consent. That is all you have to do now. You do not consent. Everything. And while people sit there, well, this doesn't work. And we've been to court and it doesn't work. So you're making record. Keep doing it. Everything that has happened so far is because of people that have actually done something. Because of people actually doing something. Not throwing affidavits at people, but actually telling them, I don't consent. Where can I sign to make a formal complaint to my director of county, director of my county for elections, director of elections for my county, where I can put a statement and as a public comment that I do not consent. Not send them a letter, you can send them an email, that's documented. Go there and say, I want to make an official statement to you. I do not consent. That is one of the strongest words that a citizen of the United States can put together and state to any elected official. I do not consent. I do not consent. Everything happens in the time that it should. And it's always at the precipice that we get things done. I do not consent. I do not consent. That's it. I do not consent. They tell you, well, we already did. I don't care. I'm telling you, I do not consent. You are forcing me to use a system that I do not consent with. This is very important for the future. This is how you make record. This is how you get things done. I do not consent. I can't express it in any more stronger fashion or words. Once you say those magic words, because it has to be magic words, things magically happen. Almost like the way the whole nation is losing their mind on people sending them spoliation letters. Oh, what is this? I mean, I even had a prosecutor contact my attorney, and I'm actually in litigation, asking him, she sent this letter off, and blah, blah, blah. And how did he say it? Hold on. The purported notice on hold is deficient on numerous aspects. Listen, boy. Listen, Mr. Where is he from? What county? Zachary West. Oh, and Zachary West. So he's he's got 3 names. Perfect. Perfect asset. From Athens County Prosecutor's Office. He's like, she's never your board has potentially standing to bring a suit. Oh, your client would potentially have the standing to bring a suit, and how the board has harmed someone who has never resided or run for office in Athens. They're panicking, but they're too dumb to understand what that letter is. They are panicking that they're contacting my attorney, and he's like, look, that lawsuit hasn't been filed yet. I sent them letters saying, I'm going to file a suit. Hold on to that shit. I want to know everything. Now they're panicking. We didn't do anything. We didn't run for office. We're just doing our job. No. Hold on to that stuff, because this is important. This is very important. Again, the panic that they're showing nationwide, that people are, not doing things the way they should, is a very, very, very big deal. One moment, please. Sorry about that. Had to turn off my phone. So everyone across the nation, all the counties that have gotten any communications from you, have lost their mind, very upset that you didn't just ask for, ballots and stuff. You asked them for names. You asked them for DHS contracts. You asked to expose the fact that our elections are federalized. You asked to show the memorandums of agreements that they have in place with agencies that you don't even know exist that are running on your elections. You asked them for information that tells them that I mean, why else would a prosecutor be like all panicky and stuff? Like, we didn't run for office. We're just going to follow the law. And it's like, just because you explained it to the guy that didn't direct it to you, it doesn't mean anything. Your client's letter fails to provide any controlling or even persuasive authority. My authority is I'm a citizen, Mr. Athens prosecutor. And I guess you're not going to be practicing after I file my lawsuit, because if you do destroy it and you haven't read the letter, well, then you're going to have the problem, because if you destroy evidence, precedent says that I'm right and you're wrong. So if you can't prove that I'm wrong because you destroyed it, then guess what? My word counts, not yours. And that's the way it works in law. When you tell someone you better hold on to it, and they tell you, well, nah. Okay, fine. Then you go to court and you're like, look, I sent them this. I filed the case. I sent them this letter. They ignored me, and they're like, oh, we're just going to follow whatever the Secretary of State says. Don't worry. I'm going to take care of him. That's for my state. I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to drag the truth out into the light. I'm going to show the world how the most evil business in the World Economic Forum, is his actual God. Now, on that note, I'm going to have to hop over to Rumble, because on YouTube, I can't flash any videos, or else, I'll get the axe. So come on over to Rumble, where you can see this evil business.